Top 6 actors. Anthony Hopkins hated the most.
But I think it's the certainty within them that's attractive. The unblinkered look into the darkness that is fascinating.
Anthony Hopkins may be a cinematic legend, but not everyone gets a standing ovation from him off-screen. Behind the brilliance was zero-tolerance on-set meltdowns, bitter grudges, and feuds that exploded far beyond the final cut. 6. Shirley MacLaine. Shirley MacLaine, just hearing her name makes Anthony Hopkins' blood boil. He didn't hold back when he called her the most obnoxious actress I have ever worked with. And coming from Hopkins, known for his incredible talent and brutal honesty, that's saying something. Their time together on the set of A Change of Seasons wasn't just tense, it was a full-blown war. The set became less of a workplace and more like a battlefield, with sparks flying every single day.
You know, how many lives had he led? And all of these lives were coming through his consciousness. That's why he could act anything.
Rumors flew around about shouting matches so intense they actually stopped production. Hopkins reportedly refused to even glance in MacLaine's direction between takes, his icy disdain practically freezing the air. But MacLaine wasn't about to be cowed. She fired back with biting comebacks that matched Hopkins' coldness. Blow for blow. I didn't like him either, she famously snapped, like a duel was declared and accepted. And duel they did, day after day, their off-screen hatred echoing through every corner of the set. The animosity between them was more than just tension, it was volcanic. Crew members allegedly tiptoed around the set, afraid to get caught in the crossfire. One insider even joked that their on-screen marriage felt less like acting and more like a real-life documentary on hatred. Their loathing was so real, a crew member said, it's a miracle the camera didn't melt under the heat. But if Shirley MacLaine was a thorn in Hopkins' side, Mickey Rourke was a hurricane that nearly tore him apart. 5. Mickey Rourke. To Hopkins, working with Rourke on Desperate Hours wasn't just difficult, it was downright traumatic. He later described the experience with a kind of horror reserved for war veterans. It was like going to set on a wing in a prayer. And with Rourke involved, prayer wasn't nearly enough.
So he clearly crossed the line. It was really inappropriate.
Rourke's chaotic, unhinged energy was legendary, and Hopkins was its unwilling victim. While Hopkins meticulously prepared for each scene, bringing his signature precision and control, Rourke tore through the set like a man possessed. His method acting wasn't dedication. It was a weapon, wielded with reckless abandon. Rourke wasn't just playing an escaped convict. He was one, at least in his mind. And Hopkins bore the brunt of it. The clash between their approaches was seismic. Hopkins valued order and discipline. Rourke thrived on mayhem. Their on-screen dynamic may have been captivating, but behind the scenes, it was nothing short of a nightmare. Hopkins reportedly dreaded every encounter, bracing himself for whatever chaos Rourke would unleash that day. Whether it was his unpredictable mood swings, his refusal to break character, or his sheer disregard for the comfort of his co-stars, Rourke seemed determined to push Hopkins to his breaking point. And he nearly succeeded. The tension between them grew so thick you could cut it with a knife. Insiders whispered that Hopkins considered walking off the set more than once, driven to the edge by Rourke's relentless antics. It wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a full-scale war, with Hopkins battling to maintain his sanity in the face of Rourke's unrelenting chaos. For Hopkins, working with Shirley MacLaine was infuriating. Working with Mickey Rourke, that was a descent into madness. These weren't just bad collaborations, they were experiences that Hopkins likely remembers with a shudder to this day. 2 actors, 2 stories, and 2 unforgettable clashes that left scars both on screen and behind the scenes. 4. Ryan Gosling. Let's talk about Ryan Gosling, Hollywood's golden boy, heartthrob, and apparently Anthony Hopkins' personal nemesis on the set of Fracture, 2007. Now don't let Gosling's babyface charm fool you. To Hopkins, working with Gosling felt less like a cinematic collaboration and more like a slow descent into madness.
I have a real love-hate.
Hopkins, the consummate professional, approached the project with his usual razor-sharp focus. But Gosling? Oh no. Gosling came armed with a notebook full of questions, theories, and probably an existential inquiry or two. It wasn't long before Hopkins started seeing red. Picture this. You're Sir Anthony Hopkins, an actor so revered that Shakespeare would probably ask for your autograph. And here's this rookie firing off endless questions about the motivation behind every blink and breath. For weeks, Hopkins allegedly thought Gosling was sabotaging the film. Is he trying to kill me with tedium? Hopkins reportedly grumbled to anyone within earshot. His frustration bubbled over more than once. Rumor has it, Hopkins stormed off the set not once, but several times, muttering something along the lines of, "This isn't acting, it's a philosophy seminar." Crew members knew to steer clear of him when Gosling was nearby. The tension between them was thick enough to cut with a dull butter knife. But here's the kicker. Despite all the animosity, Gosling's meticulous nature eventually started to win Hopkins over. By the time the camera stopped rolling, the two had reached a kind of uneasy truce. Still, the scars of their initial clashes lingered. Hopkins, ever the gentleman, has never publicly bashed Gosling, but let's just say you won't find them sharing a table at the Oscars after party anytime soon. 3. Mel Gibson. Now, if Ryan Gosling was the slow burn that irked Hopkins, Mel Gibson was the full-blown wildfire that consumed him on the set of The Bounty, 1984. Hopkins played Captain Bligh, a role steeped in authority and rigidity, while Gibson took on Fletcher Christian, the rebellious first mate. It was a dynamic doomed from the start because their characters' mutual disdain spilled over into real life, faster than you can say mutiny.
You can't get mad. You can't get mad.
From day one, their working relationship was like a powder keg with a lit fuse. Hopkins, known for his precision and control, couldn't stand Gibson's laid-back, devil-may-care attitude. And Gibson? He thought Hopkins was stiff, uptight, and let's be honest here, a bit of a buzzkill. If you want to give me trouble, I'll give you trouble. Hopkins reportedly snapped during one of their countless on-set clashes. And boy, did Gibson take him up on that offer. Their arguments became legendary, with crew members joking that they should have filmed a behind-the-scenes documentary titled The Real Mutiny on the Bounty. Every interaction seemed to be a battle for dominance, with neither willing to give an inch. Some say their tension added to the authenticity of their performances, but let's be real, it probably shaved a few years off everyone's life expectancy on set. Hopkins wasn't shy about expressing his disdain for Gibson's antics. And Gibson? Well, he wasn't exactly inviting Hopkins over for barbecues either. Their animosity was palpable, and insiders have speculated for years about the long-term fallout. Did their fiery clashes sour any potential for future collaborations? Most likely. The only way these two would work together again is if the script required them to fight to the death, and even then, you'd need a referee. For Hopkins, The Bounty wasn't just a challenging project, it was a battlefield. Between Gosling's relentless questions and Gibson's rebellious energy, Hopkins seems to have had his fair share of co-stars that tested his legendary patience. But if there's one thing we've learned, it's that Anthony Hopkins doesn't just survive these encounters, he thrives, turning every ounce of tension into unforgettable performances. Still, you can't help but wonder if he keeps a list of names he'd rather never see again. Safe to say, Gosling and Gibson are near the top. 2. John Dexter. Let's dive into the chaos of Anthony Hopkins and John Dexter, a director who didn't just push Hopkins' buttons but slammed them like a DJ at a rave. Their clash is the stuff of theatrical legend, with Hopkins walking away from the misanthrope in a storm of rage that could have rivaled a Shakespearean tragedy. Here's how it went down. Dexter, known for his intense psychological tactics, treated actors less like collaborators and more like marionettes. Hopkins wasn't having it. He thinks Tony Hopkins owes him his talent. Well, that's simply not true. Hopkins later snapped, a statement so cutting it might as well have been delivered with a stage dagger. Dexter's alleged manipulation turned the set into a chessboard, where he moved his pieces with precision, often disregarding the emotional toll it took.
He's a killer who is appalled. He hates what he does.
Imagine being in Hopkins' shoes. Every rehearsal felt like a game of 4D chess, with Dexter constantly trying to outmaneuver him. It wasn't direction, it was domination. Dexter's methods reportedly included mind games designed to unsettle his actors, and for Hopkins, this crossed a line. One day, the tension reached its boiling point. Hopkins didn't just leave the misanthrope, he stormed out, slamming the door on Dexter and the play with a dramatic flourish that only a master of the craft could pull off. The irony? Despite their bitter fallout, Dexter had given Hopkins one of his most iconic roles in Equus. It's the ultimate twist of fate. The director Hopkins despised most helped shape the actor he became. Don't expect a reconciliation anytime soon. For Hopkins, Dexter was less a mentor and more a tyrant, a puppet master gone rogue. And Hopkins doesn't forgive tyrants. First, Tom Felton's. Now, speaking of tyrannies, how about Tom Felton's audition for Hitchcock? This one's a doozy. Felton, eager to impress, steps into the audition room with Hopkins sitting there in full Sir Anthony Hopkins mode. Felton decided to improvise. A bold choice, sure, but also a dangerous one when the man across from you is known for his perfectionism. What followed was 3 minutes that reportedly felt like 3 years. Felton's attempt at spontaneous brilliance unraveled faster than a cheap sweater, leaving Hopkins unimpressed. The veteran actor watched the train wreck unfold with the detached bemusement of someone watching a bad soap opera. Finally, with one word, Hopkins ended it. Next.
I think maybe because I wasn't a fan before going into the first film.
That single syllable hit harder than a hammer on glass. Felton later described the experience as humbling, which is polite British code for absolutely devastating. Insiders, however, paint a grimmer picture. Hopkins was visibly annoyed, his legendary patience stretched to its limits. Some even speculate that he vowed never to work with Felton again, though Hopkins, ever the professional, has remained tight-lipped about it. Felton might have walked away with his tail between his legs, but he wasn't alone. Many an aspiring actor has faced Hopkins' unflinching scrutiny, and few have emerged unscathed. For Hopkins, this wasn't personal. It was about maintaining standards. But for Felton, it was a lesson learned the hard way. When you're in the presence of a living legend, it's best not to improvise.